Spain, seen differently, green and mountainous. A small train passes through the north, along the Costa Verde, from Bilbao to Asturias. Here, some things are still as they used to be.
Bullfighting is an art that people in other countries do not have.
Rowing on the open sea.
In many villages on the coast, this sport is the supreme discipline.
In the mountains, treasure is stored. Cave cheese worth thousands of euros.
The horse is actually a cash cow.
A journey through Spain as you've never seen it. Life stirs around 7:30 in the morning. In the industrial metropolis of Bilbao, the pulse of the big city slowly picks up its pace. In the middle of it all, a train station suspended in time. Juanjo Olaizola is director of the Basque Railway Museum and, of course, travels by train. The train from Bilbao to Santander has been starting here for a good 125 years. Back then, the train was a sensation. Today, people mostly take the new highway to make this journey. But if you don't have to be so particular about time, you'll be happy to take the train operated by the state-owned Feve.
Sure, we live in the 21st century, but this railroad still makes you feel a bit like you're traveling in the 19th century. This is exactly what makes the railroad interesting for tourists now. It's nice just to look out the window and enjoy the scenery.
The Feve needs a full 3 hours for the first almost 100 kilometers to Santander. The track was not built directly on the coastline, but in the hinterland, for cost reasons. Railroads opened up the valleys of northern Spain at the end of the 19th century to support the ore mining industry. Most of the connections have long since disappeared. But in the Railroad Museum, the memory is kept alive. Juanjo Olaizola, the director of the Railroad Museum, has his big adventure playground here. Every weekend he heats the old steam locomotive himself, a director living the child's dream of being an engine driver.
This old locomotive has, of course, quite different peculiarities than modern locomotives. You have to keep her happy all the time, pay attention to what she needs. In fact, this is not child's play. Weight, enough coal in the fire, the water level, the gradients. It's not an impossible feat, but it's always a challenge.
Weekend visitors wait at the museum platform. Juanjo has once again convinced the old engine to pick up speed. No one would drive to work or school like this today, but it's the fascination with times past that keeps so many people hopping on.
It's a bit like time travel for me, back to a time before I was alive, and its family history. That's what my tattoo shows. I'm a railroad man, just like my father and grandfather before me. Our family lives for trains.
Vivimos toda la familia del tren. Hay gente que le gusta jugar al fútbol o subir montañas.
There are people who like to play soccer or climb mountains. I think sports are rather unhealthy. I was fascinated by steam locomotives from a very young age, and that's what brought me luck. In 1992, I was waiting for a steam locomotive at the Zaragoza train station and met the love of my life, my wife. To this day, we're a couple, at home and here on the locomotive.
With all due love and attention, Mercedes is the stoker here and has to rake in the coal. She does this every weekend so that the museum train can make its rounds. Juanjo keeps the old locomotive happy. Water and pressure in relation to the gradient, okay. Mercedes is satisfied. And that's a good thing, because with a steam locomotive, it's like in a relationship. There is a constant danger of explosion. But at least with the locomotive, you can simply turn a few screws.
The most important thing is that there is always water up here in the pipe. The water level must not be higher or lower. If the stoker doesn't feed the fire enough and the water level drops, the locomotive boiler can explode, which would be quite unpleasant and dangerous, of course.
Museum director, locomotive engineer, and married to a stoker. Juanjo Olaizola has literally found happiness on rails. Meanwhile, the Fehve leaves valleys and mountains behind and now reaches the Atlantic coast. The hill on the horizon is called the Gibraltar of the North. Santoña, a town where almost everything revolves around fish. To be precise, anchovies and cans. Supposedly, the best canned food in the world comes from here. Today's the day. 3 months ago, anchovies were pickled in the barrel and are now fermented. The smell is peculiarly intense, but Rosa Hernandez has no problem with that.
The smell is quite normal. We live in a fishing village. My grandfather, my father, my brother, my husband, all fishermen. We live here by the harbor, and the women's work has always been to process the fish, to refine the anchovies. For this you need fine hands and patience.
In Spanish, they're called anchoa, famous since Italians discovered them and used them for salting. And even King Felipe was here in Santoña a few years ago. Anchoas, good enough for the Spanish kings.
We call these little fish our blue gold. The ones with the bluish fillets are a particularly fine kind from here. Therefore, blue gold. The fishermen are always happy when they catch this kind because it brings real money to the factories and home.
Rosa's shift today goes on for a few more hours, but then the fish are cleaned. Once a year, the factory shuts down for a while. Because in Santoña, the fiesta begins, always in September. Somewhat more subdued than in previous years due to the pandemic. But the toreros are already getting ready for the corrida, the bullfight. Next to the small arena, restaurants are filling up. One of them belongs to the cannery. Rosa also works here as a waitress. It's a job, but also a lot of fun. Among friends and her own family. For Rosa, it's possible to celebrate without the bullfighting.
We like the festival itself. We don't care much about the corrida, but we respect the people who go there. For us, it's just a special day, a day when the whole family gets together to eat. It's a little bit like Christmas. The family together, that's the most important thing for us.
Nearby, the corrida begins.
Bullfighting is an art that people in other countries do not have. It's something special. I think every country should preserve its tradition, its culture.
Sure, I do feel pity for the bull, but on the other hand, that's exactly what it was raised for. It's the bull's destiny to fight bravely in the arena.
It's a drama in 3 acts. The fans, the aficionados, think the toro has it far better than those of its kind consigned to factory farming. But it almost never ends well for the bull. In Spain, too, opinions differ. For critics, bullfighting is clearly cruelty to animals. In some regions, it's been banned. But it is considered part of the national heritage, and that's why it still exists. The corrida is a tradition and continues to have many followers, especially here in northern Spain.
As long as we still have money, we continue to travel from fiesta to fiesta. After Santander, we go to Logroño, later to Sevilla, then to Madrid. We still have a lot of plans.
The very next morning, the aficionados board the ferry on their good-humored way to the next spectacle. In the green hills along the railroad line, a man is in a hurry. Father Ernesto. It is Sunday, just before noon. Time for Mass. Ernesto is late. He has a lot to do. But there is always time for a quick chat.
How are you, pilgrims?
The pilgrims are doing well. Originally, they are from Brazil and from Madrid. But now they live in Germany.
It's a beautiful day for hiking. I wish you a good trip.
Ernesto's church in Barrio is located on the way of St. James. Now it's already 12 o'clock and Ernesto is needed. After an entertaining half hour, Mass is read. The church is always well filled, and this is mainly due to Ernesto. He is a legend.
I'm glad that I'm doing so well and can still do this at my age. After all, it is not only a service to the church, but to my village. I was born here. I live here. And despite my age, it makes me feel young.
And on it goes. In the neighboring village, Mass still has to be read and a child baptized. Up on the hill of Gümes is Ernesto's home. He inherited the house and farm from his grandfather and turned it into a pilgrim hostel.
Hello.
Where are you from?
From Valencia.
How was the journey?
It was raining and cold. You're Ernesto, right?
Yes, for the last 84 years, but I've grown a little.
In summer, it gets really crowded here. 40 or 50 exhausted pilgrims, and all happy to receive a proper meal. The pilgrims have to share one room with Ernesto's most loyal friend, his Land Rover. Unfortunately, after an accident, it is no longer as fit as Ernesto himself.
I have a very special relationship with him. He is 46 years old, and we have traveled and worked together in 38 countries, covering more than 700,000 kilometers. I think it's the greatest Land Rover in Spain, with all we've been through together.
Más importante de España, por esas tres características de años, de viajes y sobre todo de trabajos.
Ernesto documented his missionary trips through photography. More than 80,000 slides, an eventful working life, and he also has his own history with the railroad, the FEV.
Después de la Guerra Civil Española,
after the Spanish Civil War and the Second World War, when I was just 8 years old, we had to emigrate to Catalonia. Together with 5 children, my parents left home and took the FEV from the train station in Villaverde de Pontones, 8 kilometers from here, to Bilbao.
De Villaverde de Pontones, 8 kilómetros de aquí, y vamos a Bilbao.
That's another reason why my family and I have a great emotional connection to the train.
During the Franco dictatorship, Ernesto's family suffered from hunger. Only years later was he able to return. That was a long time ago. Today, he has to go again. A mass, maybe a funeral. There's always something. The FEV travels as ever through Cantabria in northern Spain, an area that, despite its beauty, has been spared from mass tourism. The surfers have been coming in droves only for a few years. Traditionally, there's another water sport here, the trenera. The sport originated among fishermen. Whoever first brought the catch to port or arrived out at sea to the merchant ships earned the most. Joseba Fernandez is standing on the dinghy. He coaches the Pedreña rowing club. Tomorrow is the most important competition of the year.
Not strenuous training today, but there's still a bit missing for tomorrow if we want to reach the final. It's about the Champions League, so to speak. We've been there many times before, but it's going to be tough for us.
The patron, the helmsman, gives the commands. The coach looks on critically, and the boys literally have to put their backs into it. It's out to the open sea. There, it's all about a fast, elegant turn, despite the waves. It worked well in training, and tomorrow? The rowers have been waiting for the next day for a year. Tonight, some will sleep badly. La Concha is the name of the famous beach on San Sebastián. This is also the name of the regatta Bandera de la Concha, which is a popular festival lasting several days. Rowers from 24 villages have been allowed to travel to the playoffs. Rowing is more than a hobby here. It's part of the village DNA. Club Pedreña is also in final preparations.
In many villages on the coast, this sport is the supreme discipline. We grew up here, always with the trenera, with all the stories of rowing. Our fathers and grandfathers spoke about it. It is a tradition that is passed down from generation to generation.
Joseba gives the patron final instructions for a perfect turn in today's weather conditions. To the layman, the weather looks harmless.
The weather is deceptive. Here on the beach everything looks calm, but out there the waves have real power, and you have to go far out.
Pedreña used to win here a lot, but that was a few years ago. Today no one bets on them. The race begins. Things are going quite well, until the turnaround. In the end, 14th place. Not enough to reach the finals. Not for the Champions League of Treneras. Next year, they will try again. The ferry is on its way from Santander to Oviedo. Another 5 hours to cover 190 kilometers. A really comfortable pace. But it suits this region of Spain, the north, which, protected by the mountains of the Cordillera Cantabrica, has always ticked differently than the south of the country. A la primera hora, that is at the earliest of the early hours, lights are on already at Cattle Dealer Vidal. Its stars need to be spruced up. They're off to the cattle market.
We clean them up so that they are really beautiful. To make an impression, the cows have to be beautiful. It's like when you go to a dance, you dress up beforehand. It's the same with the cows. They go to the market looking nice and clean.
Vidal wants to sell 3 dairy cows today, but the industry is no longer doing well. Prices are rock bottom. But Vidal is an optimist and obviously loves his job. He's a little late, but speeding is not an option.
I have to drive nice and slowly. I want the cows to arrive safe and sound. I have to think about what I'm transporting here. It's not like driving a fruit truck. The fruit can't get sick.
The fervour also stops him. But then he reaches the cattle market. Not just any old cattle market, but the Mercado Nacional de Ganados de Torrelavega, a holdover from the megalomaniacal Franco era. Vidal is in a hurry to present his 3 cows. A customer, also a trader, is already waiting. The hairdresser's work has paid off. The man in the brown smock doesn't flinch long and buys the cow for a tidy price on a handshake. Around it stand the witnesses. Vidal brings the cow for test milking. The day starts well. But then come the next interested parties for cow number 2. They want to impose a hard price on him.
Here, take the money. The cow is mine now.
While Vidal fights back, someone is already untying the cow. But it can't be had that cheaply.
Don't make such a fuss. Don't you need it?
Vidal won't accept this offer. He tells him that the man won't get the cow. An archaic world with harsh customs. Vidal is lucky today. The nice buyer of cow 1 has also bought number 2 at a fair price. Now it goes to the loading. But apparently his customer has made a bulk purchase. It's getting a little cramped in the van. It's hard work, he says. You have to get up early. That's probably true. But he likes doing it. And as they say, if you like doing something, it's easier. Close to the cattle market, the fervour sets course for the Picos de Europa, the high mountains that stand directly on the Atlantic beach, so to speak. The train jerks along at 30 to 40 kilometers here. Better than running.
I'm on holiday here. I'm hiking the St. James Way. Today, though, I'm taking it easy on the train because my leg hurts terribly from top to bottom. Tomorrow, I'll continue the hike.
The tired hiker has chosen a particularly beautiful section of the route. This part of the Costa Verde coast is also called Costa Esmeralda because of the emerald-colored water. Behind the church of San Vicente de la Barquera, you suddenly see the Picos, the mountains very close. The train branches off into mountain valleys. The Lonely Planet travel guide recently described this area as perhaps one of the last wilderness regions in Europe. The Picos de Europa owe their name to the first voyagers to America. On the way back, after weeks at sea, these peaks, up to over 2,000 meters high, were the first thing to be seen of Europe. Quite high up, in the village of Caín, Enrique Menendez and his colleague have a difficult day ahead of them. The water canal, which runs a good 9 kilometers from here down into the valley, needs to be cleaned. Up here, water from the Cares River is normally dammed and fed into the canal. From the control center, they want to open the dam so that the channel goes dry. And then comes the hour of the high visibility vests. Enrique presses the button inside and the dam wall outside opens. The water of the Cares now flows unchecked into its natural bed, down into the gorge. So far, everything seems to be working.
We have now opened gates 1, 2 and 4 so that the water can drain out of the reservoir. We close gate 5, 300 meters further back, so that the guys can work there.
It's hurried work. That much seems certain. Today in autumn, the time is favorable. Enrique does this here once a year.
We always do it at this time of year because the river has the least water then, and because there are fewer hikers around. Then we have more peace to look after the fish, because they now have to be rescued quickly and put back into the water somewhere else.
The small reservoir has gone dry. The mountains are a national park and every animal is under strict protection. So any trout that would end up dry here must be collected and released elsewhere. And that goes for the whole 9 kilometers of the canal as it travels through the mountains here above the river. For this purpose, more than 100 years ago, this footpath was created next to the channel to make inspection possible. Only once the fish have been removed do the cleaning machines come. Down below, a hydroelectric power plant is waiting. Enrique inspects the canal to make sure a lot of electricity can be produced there. A service route that is considered one of the most beautiful hiking trails in Spain. The Ruta del Cares.
You have to be clear about where you are working here. It's important to take care of nature, but even more, you have to treat it respectfully. Of course, we have to take care of the fish and put them back into the river alive. And the hydropower we use here generates clean energy. That's why we need the canal. And it blends in beautifully with the landscape.
As maintenance continues, the hiking trail fills up with hikers around noon. Inside the mountain, the fish rescuers are on the last meters. After 5 or 6 hours, they have completed all 9 kilometers. But they are slowly losing patience. The generator produces an electrical charge that stuns the fish for a split second. At the moment of immobility, down come the landing nets. Then off they go to join the others, to be released again in the river. Now the sewer work can really start. And again in a few weeks, Enrique will be chasing water down through these pipes into the turbines of the hydroelectric plant. Up here in the Picos de Europa, Spain looks a bit like Switzerland. An unusual team is transporting precious cargo through the mountains. Jorge González has had a very special job for a few years now.
Before that, I was a bus driver and also a truck driver, traveling all over Spain. But that has nothing to do with what I'm doing here now. Because now, I'm returning to my roots.
With his helper Boya, Jorge prepares the horse to transport a treasure. The famous queso de Cabrales, the specialty of the region, produced down in the valley. But the cheese has to be refined up here in the mountains. For this, the 4 of them hike an arduous path almost every day to a secret cave, of which there are dozens up here.
For the queso de Cabrales, like this one, combines optimal conditions: 100% humidity and a constant temperature. That is, between 9 degrees in summer and 6 degrees in winter. This is the best temperature range for ripening.
Jorge washes the cheese to prepare it for the next ripening stage. He's been doing this for a few years now, and his standards are high.
We want to make the best cabrales ever here, every year, the way our customers appreciate it. No two cheeses are the same. They are natural products made from raw milk, and they always develop a little differently. And we want to take them all in the same good direction. That's the challenge.
Even those who like cheese must first learn to like a cabrales. It is strong, pungent, sweet, and its smell really takes some getting used to. But Jorge's cheese is a fine product for which connoisseurs sometimes pay a lot of money. The finished cheese is loaded for the return trip. The happiness of gourmets lies on the back of a horse.
The horse is actually a cash cow. It is a valuable animal for us anyway, but with its load, it's really valuable.
And off they go, back to the village. Jorge is still learning his craft. The old cheese master Pepe is in poor health, no longer fit enough for the tour in the mountains, but he is considered a master of his craft.
The most important thing is the time in the cave. There are so many steps that influence the cheese, but in the cave, that's where you make it good or bad. You can influence it yourself. Look at the cheese, or talk to it, so to speak. Try things that make it better. And if those don't work, then do something different. At some point, you have so much experience that it comes easily.
Pepe seems to have found the right successor in Jorge. The fervour winds slowly out of the mountains. It is not far to Oviedo, the capital of Asturias. From there, it goes back in the direction of Bilbao, as it has done for over 100 years, at the pace of times gone by, through a region between high mountains and the Atlantic.